It lasted only 12 minutes. 12 minutes that changed the balance of power between America and Israel forever. Benjamin Netanyahu had just finished his private ultimatum to FBI Director Kash Patel. He spoke of strategic partnerships, shared intelligence, and the need to understand priorities. He was waiting for the standard compliance. But then Kash Patel stood up and said something that shocked the entire Israeli delegation. This wasn't an ordinary exchange between allies. This was the moment when America's top law enforcement officer told Israel's Prime Minister that the FBI doesn't take orders from foreign governments. White House Situation Room, December 15, 2025. For Benjamin Netanyahu, this was supposed to be another routine diplomatic victory. For the past decade, the Israeli Prime Minister had grown accustomed to American officials bending to his will, especially when it came to investigations that might embarrass Israel. Every FBI probe, every congressional inquiry, every media investigation. Netanyahu had learned exactly which buttons to press to make them disappear. But Kash Patel wasn't like his predecessors. 2 weeks earlier, something had happened that changed everything. A classified FBI report had landed on Patel's desk, a 147-page document that would make any intelligence director's blood run cold. The report detailed a massive foreign influence operation targeting American universities, media outlets, and government officials. At the center of it all, a complex web of Israeli intelligence operations designed to shape American public opinion about Gaza. The investigation had started innocently enough. Following the Charlie Kirk assassination, FBI counterintelligence teams had been tracking suspicious financial flows into American activist networks. What they discovered went far beyond student protests. They found something that shook the very foundations of American sovereignty, a systematic campaign by Israeli intelligence to manipulate American law enforcement investigations. But here's what nobody knew yet. The operation had a code name: Operation Clean Slate, and its primary target wasn't just American public opinion. It was the FBI itself. Have you ever wondered why certain investigations into Israeli activities in America always seem to hit dead ends? Why witnesses disappeared, evidence vanished, and cases were quietly closed? The answer was about to blow apart 30 years of carefully constructed political theater. In his corner office at FBI headquarters, Kash Patel had been studying the files for 72 hours straight. His senior counterintelligence chief, Deputy Director Sarah Chen, had briefed him on the scope of what they'd uncovered. The numbers were staggering. $2.3 billion funneled through shell companies, over 400 American officials compromised, and a network of assets that reached into every major newsroom in America. "Sir, this goes deeper than we initially thought," Chen had told him during their classified briefing. "We're not just talking about university donations or media influence. We're talking about active measures against American law enforcement." She placed a folder marked Top Secret No Phone on his desk. "They have assets inside the bureau." Patel's jaw tightened as he flipped through surveillance photos, intercepted communications, and financial records. But the document that made his blood boil was a memo dated just 3 months earlier. It was from a senior Israeli intelligence official to his American contact. The FBI investigation into Gaza protest funding must be neutralized. Use all available assets. Priority Alpha. What Patel didn't realize was that his investigation had already been detected. In Tel Aviv, inside the heavily secured offices of Mossad headquarters, Netanyahu was receiving hourly updates about the FBI probe. His intelligence chiefs had one message: this investigation could destroy everything they'd built in America over 3 decades. The American FBI director is not controllable like the others. His intelligence chief had warned during an emergency briefing. Patel isn't motivated by money, political ambition, or social access. He actually believes in American sovereignty. That last phrase was delivered with the kind of disdain usually reserved for a mortal enemy. Netanyahu's plan was simple and had worked countless times before. Fly to Washington under the guise of routine diplomatic consultations. Meet privately with key American officials. Remind them of shared values, mutual interests, and the consequences of misunderstanding the situation. Most American politicians folded within minutes. But as Netanyahu's plane touched down at Andrews Air Force Base, Patel was receiving another piece of the puzzle. A NSA intercept had captured a conversation between two Israeli officials discussing the Patel problem. The transcript was chilling. If he proceeds with this investigation, we'll have to implement the Samson option domestically. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. in the White House Situation Room. Netanyahu arrived with his usual entourage, his chief of staff, his intelligence liaison, and his American lawyer, a former senior FBI official who'd been on Israel's payroll for a decade. The room was secure, soundproof, and designed for the most sensitive conversations in American government. President Trump was not present. This was deliberate. Netanyahu wanted to handle this technical matter with law enforcement directly. He'd done it before with other FBI directors. A private conversation, some gentle pressure, maybe a few veiled threats about intelligence sharing. It always worked. At exactly 3 p.m., Kash Patel entered the Situation Room. He carried only a single folder, unmarked, thin, but containing documents that would change the meeting's entire trajectory. Netanyahu greeted him with his characteristic smile, the kind practiced in 1,000 diplomatic encounters. Director Patel Netanyahu began, his English perfect but carrying that slight accent that reminded listeners of his authority. Thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you must be with domestic matters. The subtext was clear. Stick to domestic matters, Prime Minister, Patel replied, his voice steady but with an edge that surprised everyone in the room. I'm always busy when foreign governments try to interfere with American law enforcement. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Netanyahu's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that only a trained observer would notice, but Patel noticed. I'm not sure I understand, Netanyahu said, his tone still diplomatic but with a warning underneath. Israel has always been America's most reliable partner in intelligence sharing. We've helped the FBI prevent countless terrorist attacks on American soil. Yes, Patel replied, opening his folder. We've been quite grateful for that cooperation, which is why I'm so disappointed to learn about Operation Clean Slate. If the room was cold before, it was now Arctic. Netanyahu's chief of staff actually stopped breathing for a moment. The Israeli intelligence liaison's hand moved instinctively toward his secure phone. Nobody was supposed to know that code name. But Patel wasn't finished. He pulled out a single document, a bank transfer record showing $15 million moving from a shell company in Cyprus to a research foundation at Columbia University. The payment was made just 2 days before a major Gaza protest that turned violent. This is interesting, Patel continued, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who held all the cards. We've been investigating the funding sources for these campus protests. Imagine our surprise when we discovered they weren't being funded by Qatar, Iran, or Russia. They were being funded by Israel. Netanyahu tried to interject, but Patel held up his hand. Let me finish, Mr. Prime Minister, because what we discovered next was even more interesting. He pulled out another document. This one was a surveillance photo, showing a known Israeli intelligence operative meeting with the leader of a radical pro-Palestinian group in New York. The timestamp showed it was taken just hours before the group announced plans for their most disruptive protest yet. You see, we initially thought these violent protesters were genuine anti-Israel activists, Patel explained, his tone now professorial. But the more we investigated, the more we realized they were being manipulated. Their most extreme actions, their most violent rhetoric, their most inflammatory tactics, all encouraged and funded by Israeli intelligence. The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. Netanyahu's legendary composure was beginning to crack. The strategy is brilliant, I'll give you that, Patel continued. Fund the most extreme anti-Israel voices. Make them as violent and unreasonable as possible. Then point to them as proof that all criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic terrorism. It's psychological warfare against the American public. Netanyahu finally found his voice. Director Patel, I think there's been some misunderstanding. These allegations are not allegations. Patel interrupted, pulling out a thick stack of documents. Evident communications intersects, financial records, surveillance footage, witness testimony. We have it all. But the real bombshell was still coming. Patel reached into his folder one final time and withdrew a photograph that made Netanyahu's face go white. It showed two men shaking hands in what appeared to be a restaurant. One was a senior FBI official who'd left the bureau 5 years earlier. The other was Netanyahu's intelligence chief. This is interesting too, Patel said. Your intelligence service has been recruiting former FBI officials for quite some time, not just as consultants or advisors, as active assets, people who maintained their security clearances, their access, their influence, people who could make investigations disappear. Netanyahu tried to stand, but Patel's next words stopped him cold. Sit down, Mr. Prime Minister, because I'm not finished explaining what we've uncovered about foreign interference in American law enforcement. What happened next would be discussed in intelligence circles for decades. Patel laid out the entire operation, how Israeli intelligence had systematically compromised American institutions, how they'd manipulated investigations, how they'd turned American law enforcement into a tool of foreign policy. Do you know what the penalty is for conspiracy to obstruct federal investigations? Patel asked. Do you know what happens to foreign officials who attempt to suborn American law enforcement? Netanyahu's lawyer leaned forward. Director Patel, the Prime Minister enjoys diplomatic immunity. From prosecution, yes, Patel replied, but not from exposure, not from the complete declassification of every document related to Operation Clean Slate, not from congressional hearings where every compromised official will be named, not from the complete restructuring of American-Israeli intelligence sharing. The threat was clear, and it was devastating. 3 decades of carefully built influence networks could be destroyed in a matter of weeks. But Netanyahu wasn't Prime Minister of Israel for nothing. He'd survived wars, political scandals, and international crises. He wasn't going to be intimidated by an American FBI director, no matter how much evidence he claimed to have. Director Patel, Netanyahu said, his voice now carrying the steel that had made him a legend in Israeli politics. I think you're forgetting something very important. Israel isn't just another foreign country. We're your closest ally in the Middle East. We share intelligence that keeps Americans safe. We provide strategic capabilities that your own military depends on. He leaned forward, his eyes locking with Patel's. And we have relationships in Congress, in the media, in the intelligence community that go back decades. Relationships that don't disappear just because an FBI director decides to play politics. It was a threat, delivered with the subtlety of a master politician, but clear enough that everyone in the room understood. Netanyahu was reminding Patel that Israel had the power to destroy careers, end political aspirations, and make life very difficult for anyone who challenged their interests. But Patel just smiled. It was the kind of smile that worried enemies and reassured allies. The kind of smile that said, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Mr. Prime Minister, Patel replied, his voice now deadly calm. I think you're forgetting something even more important. I'm not a politician. I'm not running for office. I don't need donations, endorsements, or media coverage. I'm a federal law enforcement officer, and my only loyalty is to the United States of America. He opened his folder one more time and pulled out a document that made Netanyahu's confident expression disappear entirely. It was an NSA intercept of a phone call between Netanyahu and a prominent American senator, dated just 6 days earlier. This is you, isn't it? Patel asked, sliding the transcript across the table. Discussing how to handle the FBI situation. Talking about calling in favors and applying pressure, instructing your American assets to neutralize the investigation by any means necessary. Netanyahu stared at the document, realizing that his private conversations he thought were secure, had been monitored by American intelligence. You see, Mr. Prime Minister, while you were planning to pressure me, I was already 10 steps ahead, Patel continued. Every meeting your people had with American officials, every phone call, every financial transaction, we've been watching. We've been listening. We've been learning. But the real shock came with Patel's next revelation. Did you really think we wouldn't notice when your intelligence services tried to hack FBI databases, when they attempted to plant malware in our systems, when they tried to recruit our agents? The room erupted. Netanyahu's intelligence liaison jumped to his feet, his face red with anger and embarrassment. These are completely unfounded accusations. Israel would never sit down, Patel commanded, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Or I'll have security escort you out of this building and permanently revoke your diplomatic visa. The Israeli official looked to Netanyahu, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. The man sat down, but his humiliation was visible to everyone in the room. Patel continued his methodical demolition of Israeli operations in America. We have evidence of attempts to compromise FBI communications systems. We have records of Israeli intelligence officers using diplomatic cover to conduct surveillance on American citizens. We have proof of systematic efforts to interfere with federal law enforcement investigations. But then came the revelation that changed everything. And we have evidence, Patel said, pulling out his final document, of direct threats against the life of an FBI director. The last document was a communication intercept from Israeli intelligence discussing permanent solutions to the Patel problem. The language was coded, but the meaning was unmistakable. Netanyahu's face went from pale to ashen. This wasn't just about political pressure anymore. This was about potential conspiracy charges that could destroy not just his government, but his freedom. So let me make something very clear, Patel said, his voice now carrying the full authority of American law enforcement. The FBI investigation into foreign interference in American institutions will proceed. It will be thorough, it will be public, and it will follow the evidence wherever it leads. He stood up, towering over the Israeli delegation. If that investigation leads to Israeli intelligence operations on American soil, so be it. If it leads to compromised American officials, they will be prosecuted. If it leads to foreign attempts to obstruct justice, there will be consequences. Netanyahu tried one final gambit. Director Patel, I think you're making a serious mistake. The relationship between Israel and America is bigger than any single investigation. There are strategic considerations, political realities. The only reality that matters to me, Patel interrupted, is the law. And the law is very clear about foreign interference in American law enforcement. But then Patel delivered the knockout punch that no one saw coming. Oh, and Mr. Prime Minister? That dinner you had last month with 3 FBI officials who've since retired, the one where you discussed their consulting opportunities with Israeli firms, we have video. The silence that followed was deafening. Netanyahu realized that his decades-old playbook, the private meetings, the quiet pressure, the unofficial channels, had been completely compromised. The FBI hadn't just discovered his operations, they'd been monitoring them in real time. I want to be very clear about what's going to happen next, Patel announced. The FBI will release a comprehensive report on foreign interference in American institutions. Congressional hearings will be held. Every compromised official will be identified. Every illegal operation will be exposed. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. But I'm a reasonable man. I understand the importance of American-Israeli relations. So I'm going to give you a choice. Netanyahu's eyes narrowed. In his experience, when Americans offered choices, neither option was good. Choice 1, Patel continued. Israel immediately ceases all intelligence operations targeting American institutions, American officials, and American law enforcement. You recall all assets, terminate all operations, and submit to regular FBI monitoring of Israeli diplomatic facilities in America. The terms were humiliating, but Netanyahu knew there was worse coming. Choice 2, Patel said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I release everything publicly. Every document, every recording, every photograph. I let the American people decide how they feel about a foreign government attempting to control their FBI. It was checkmate, and everyone in the room knew it, but Netanyahu had one final card to play. He'd been saving it for exactly this kind of situation, when all other options were exhausted and his back was against the wall. "Director Patel," he said, his voice now carrying a new tone. Not threatening, but almost pleading. "I think you're underestimating the complexity of the situation. Israel isn't just another country. We're family. We share values, interests, a common destiny." It was the appeal that had worked on countless American officials over the decades. The reminder of shared heritage, common enemies, mutual dependence. But Patel's response shattered that illusion forever. "Mr. Prime Minister, my family immigrated to America from India. They came here to escape foreign domination, foreign control, foreign interference in their lives. They came here because America promised them something no other country could. The right to be loyal to only one nation." His voice grew stronger, more passionate. "My parents didn't come to America to see their adopted homeland become a puppet of any foreign government. Not Britain, not India, not Israel, not anyone. They came here because America was supposed to be different." Netanyahu realized he was witnessing something he'd never encountered before. An American official who couldn't be bought, threatened, or manipulated. An American who actually believed in American independence. "So let me tell you what's going to happen," Patel continued. "The FBI is going to do its job. We're going to investigate foreign interference wherever we find it. We're going to protect American institutions from foreign manipulation. And we're going to restore integrity to American law enforcement." He walked to the door, then turned back for his final statement. "This meeting is over. You have 48 hours to decide which option you prefer. After that, the decision will be made for you." As the door closed behind Patel, Netanyahu sat in stunned silence. For the first time in his political career, he'd encountered an American official who was willing to treat Israel like any other foreign country, subject to American law, American interests, and American sovereignty. The news of the confrontation spread through Washington like wildfire. Within hours, every major news organization was reporting on tensions between the FBI director and the Israeli Prime Minister. But the full story, the evidence of Israeli operations against American institutions, remained classified. In Tel Aviv, emergency meetings were being held throughout the night. Israeli intelligence chiefs, government ministers, and military leaders gathered to discuss what they called the American problem. For the first time in decades, Israel was facing an American administration that couldn't be controlled. The Israeli response was swift and predictable. Within 24 hours, American newspapers were filled with stories questioning Patel's competence, his loyalty, his fitness for office. Former FBI officials, the same ones caught on surveillance meeting with Israeli handlers, appeared on television calling for his resignation. Congressional allies of Israel demanded investigations into Patel's vendetta against America's closest ally. Prominent Jewish organizations issued statements expressing concern about rising anti-Semitism in law enforcement. The pressure campaign was massive, coordinated, and exactly what Patel had expected. But Patel had prepared for this moment. At 3 p.m. on December 17th, exactly 48 hours after his confrontation with Netanyahu, he held a press conference that would change American politics forever. "My fellow Americans," he began, standing behind the FBI podium with the American flag prominent behind it. "For too long, foreign governments have treated American law enforcement as their personal security service. That ends today." He held up a thick folder. "Today, the FBI is releasing the first installment of our investigation into foreign interference in American institutions. This report documents systematic attempts by foreign intelligence services to compromise American officials, manipulate American investigations, and control American policy." The bombshells came fast and devastating. Names of compromised officials, evidence of illegal operations, proof of decades of systematic subversion. The American public learned for the first time how their own institutions had been turned against them by foreign operatives. But the most shocking revelation was saved for last. We have evidence that foreign intelligence services have attempted to assassinate American officials who refused to comply with their demands. This includes threats against FBI personnel, congressional investigators, and journalists who have exposed foreign operations. The gasps in the press room were audible. American journalists couldn't believe what they were hearing. Effective immediately, Patel announced, the FBI is implementing new protocols for all interactions with foreign intelligence services. No more private meetings, no more informal arrangements, no more special relationships that put foreign interests above American law. The reaction was explosive. Netanyahu's government issued angry denials, claiming the FBI was promoting anti-Semitism and damaging critical alliances. But the evidence was overwhelming, and more was being released every day. American public opinion shifted almost overnight. Polls showed that 73% of Americans supported the FBI investigation, with even higher numbers among young people who had grown suspicious of foreign influence in American politics. Congressional hearings were announced within a week. Foreign agents' registration requirements were strengthened. Media outlets were forced to disclose foreign funding. The entire ecosystem of foreign influence in Washington was being dismantled piece by piece. But the most significant change was psychological. For the first time in decades, American officials were saying no to foreign pressure. The idea that America should subordinate its interests to those of any foreign government, no matter how friendly, was being rejected by a new generation of leaders. Netanyahu's government fell within 6 months, brought down by the scandal of their American operations being exposed. Israeli voters were furious that their tax money had been spent on elaborate influence schemes, while their own country faced serious domestic challenges. A new Israeli government, led by pragmatic leaders who understood that genuine partnership was better than manipulative control, began rebuilding the relationship with America on more honest terms. And Kash Patel, he became a symbol of something America had almost lost, the idea that American officials should serve American interests, not foreign governments. His approval ratings soared, and even his political opponents grudgingly admitted that he'd done something necessary. Years later, historians would mark December 15, 2025 as the day American sovereignty was restored. The day when America's top law enforcement officer looked a foreign leader in the eye and said, "Not in my country." But perhaps the most telling moment came months later, during Patel's testimony before Congress about the investigation. When asked why he'd been willing to risk his career to confront foreign interference, his answer was simple: because that's what Americans do. We don't bow to foreign governments, we don't take orders from foreign leaders, and we don't allow foreign agents to control our institutions. My parents came to America to escape that kind of domination. I'll be damned if I'm going to let it happen here. The 12-minute confrontation in the White House Situation Room had changed everything. It proved that foreign influence in America wasn't invincible, that American sovereignty could be restored, and that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up and say, "This is America. We do things the American way here." Today, when young Americans learn about this period in their history, they learn about the FBI director who reminded the world that America answers to Americans, not to foreign government. They learn about the day when American independence was won all over again, not with bullets and battles, but with courage, evidence, and the simple assertion that American law applies to everyone, including America's so-called friend. The ripple effects of that December confrontation continued for years. Within months of Patel's revelations, similar investigations were launched in Britain, France, and Germany. European intelligence agencies discovered their own versions of Operation Clean Slate, systematic foreign influence campaigns that had compromised their institutions for decades. But the most unexpected consequence came from within Israel itself. A new generation of Israeli leaders, embarrassed by the exposure of their predecessors' manipulative tactics, began advocating for a different approach to international relations. They argued that genuine partnerships built on mutual respect were stronger than relationships based on coercion and control. "We spent billions trying to control American policy," one former Israeli intelligence official admitted in a leaked interview. "But we never realized we were destroying the very relationship we were trying to protect. Real allies don't spy on each other. Real allies don't threaten each other. Real allies don't try to control each other's law enforcement." The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Decades of institutional habits don't change overnight. But something fundamental had shifted in the way America interacted with the world. Foreign diplomats learned that the old playbook, the private dinners, the quiet pressure, the implicit threats, no longer worked with American officials. Other FBI directors in other countries began citing the Patel doctrine when foreign governments tried to pressure them. The idea spread that law enforcement agencies serve their own people first, not foreign interests. It became a symbol of institutional independence worldwide. And in America, the investigation that started with tracking protest funding evolved into the largest counterintelligence operation in FBI history. Over 200 foreign agents were expelled, dozens of compromised officials were prosecuted, and an entire shadow network of foreign influence was dismantled. But perhaps most importantly, a new standard was established for American leadership. The expectation that American officials would put American interests first stopped being controversial and became patriotic common sense again. Years later, when international relations professors teach about the period, they point to December 15, 2025 as a turning point, not just in American-Israeli relations, but in the broader question of national sovereignty in an interconnected world. They call it the day America remembered how to say no. And sometimes, late at night in the FBI building, you can still find Kash Patel working in his office, reviewing cases, protecting American institutions, and making sure that what happened in December 2020, because that's what American patriots do. They guard the guardians, they watch the watchers, and they never ever let foreign governments forget that America is a sovereign nation. The lesson was clear. In a world full of influence operations, psychological warfare, and diplomatic manipulation, sometimes the most radical act is simply doing your job with integrity. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against foreign interference is an American official who actually believes in American independence. And sometimes all it takes to restore national sovereignty is 12 minutes of courage and the willingness to look a foreign leader in the eye and say, "Not in my America."